I make a joke about it a lot, but I think nudism really can change the world. I'm not just saying we should all just get naked all the time, but the mindset behind nudism is very, very magical. Having that ego check where like you realize that you're not better than anybody else. Like whatever you think, if you're like this wanting this higher power to tell people what to do, I don't know. It's just when you actually get to reflect on yourself, you start to you find flaws, and like flaws are good to check yourself with. You're like, I'm not perfect.
Welcome to the Give and Consent podcast. The purpose of this show is to introduce you to the people and ideas behind sex positivity, and a huge part of that is around body positivity. And today I'm joined by Blake from Our Naked Story, who's going to talk to us about nudism. Welcome, Blake.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the place that I would like to start around nudism is how it is different in a lot of ways from maybe what people's idea of nudism is from. Like, is it a swinger club type thing?
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, there's a bunch of stereotypes behind nudists. So maybe I'll just start with what it actually is. So at least what it is to me is just being comfortable in your own body and walking around naked, doing normal everyday types of activities such as gardening or cleaning, anything like that. But you're just naked. So you're just very comfortable, you're just aware of yourself and you're aware of other people and other people's feelings and stuff like that. So the stigma behind it, or what people think, they do think it is some kind of like sex cult type of thing that happens where, if everybody's just naked, then you guys are all just kind of like banging each other the whole time. You know what I mean? So it's very hard to explain to somebody, especially somebody who's never tried it before, what it actually is. So right off the bat, I would just say, if you're even interested in it, before you make any judgments, I would just say, just try it out first. So you'll understand that it's not this like swingers, everybody's sex party.
And I think it's important to say, though, there are places that call themselves like nudist resorts that actually are for swingers. Like, is there an easy way to tell the difference between the two?
So that's kind of one of the problems that we have been seeing. You're totally right. If you do a Google search in at least my area, it's the number one Google search pops up as a nudist resort. I'm not going to say what resort it is. I'm not bagging on it. But if somebody were to go, it's not a nudist resort. It is a swingers resort. So I guess to kind of not get trapped in that, definitely do your research. Don't just go off of the first thing you see, where you hear the word nudist, you see nudist in the title, and then you're like, all right, we're going there. Like, I'm not going to read into anything. We're just going to go check it out as a nudist resort. Because I would hate for anybody to go just show up to like a swingers resort, and then you have this mindset where they're like, everybody's explaining, oh, well, it's not a sex thing. And all of a sudden everybody's just like banging each other. So it's like, that would be a really bad first time. Which has happened before, to certain people that we know. But definitely do research. Try to get as much information as you can. So I would say, even just if you're going to go to a nudist resort, I would call ahead first and just say, hey, like, just to make sure like this is a nude resort. One really big component, especially in the United States, is if you look for ANR. So ANR is the American Association for Nude Recreation. And actual nude resorts, they have to get, you pretty much get like this membership from ANR saying that you are a verified nudist resort. So if you ever see the word ANR, AANR, for sure, you're going to the right place.
Nice. That's really helpful. And you're a resource also, because you're involved in both a meetup group and you're producing a podcast. Why don't we start with the meetup group and what it means to be a naturist?
Okay, yeah. So one of the meetup groups that I'm in charge of is the Southern California Naturist Association, SCNA, and then also Young Naturists of America, so YNA as well. And pretty much what that is, it's officially on Meetup. So if you're interested in hanging out with like-minded individuals who want to kind of pursue more of this nudist social nudity environment, then that would be a good place to start off if you're in Southern California, obviously. And kind of what that is if we ever have like an event at any of the nudist resorts, most of them are the ANR resorts. So if you ever have an event there, we'll post it on there. And then you can say if you're going, you can talk with other people who are there. And that's a great way to kind of meet people who are trying to get into the nudist environment.
Mhm.
And then I guess to answer your question for what actually is a nudist, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of like slack. I'm not really big on this whole like, oh no, it has to be this word, it has to be this word. So you'll hear a lot. It's nudist, naturist. Oh, I guess it's only two. I thought there was more. Anyway, so a lot of people, they're like, oh no, like you're not a nudist, you're a naturist. You're not a naturist, you're a nudist. You're what are the I forgot the other words. Anyways, so to me, I call myself a nudist or a naturist, not a big deal. So a nudist, by definition, is just somebody who likes to be without clothes when practical or when you can. To my understanding, the naturist aspect is more just trying to be in nature while you're naked. And that's kind of where they kind of butt heads a little. It's so weird out there. It's like anything really, there's always just people arguing for some reason. But don't let that scare anybody away. It doesn't matter what you are. You can just be a person who likes being naked. You don't have to worry about any labels or anything like that either.
Why do people do this? Why do people get attracted to nudism? Because it sounds really scary. And, you know, you hear a lot of people talking about how they're really nervous and how they're going to get judged. And what about my body? It's not perfect. Like, why do people do this?
But I think, and obviously I can't speak for everybody. I know that I did it because I just remember growing up and I always felt like I was kind of a weirdo because I just liked being naked. I liked sleeping naked. One of my favorite chores to do in the house was actually clean the bathroom because I could lock the door, I could get naked, and I could do something. And this is before I even knew nudism existed or naturist, whatever you want to call it. So I think a lot of people, I think everybody in a way has it in them already. It's very cliche to say, but we're all born this way anyways. And it's not until you get introduced into this society where, depending on where you're raised, that there's like your body is only like should only be shown for like your sexual partner. That should be it, and that's kind of one of the big things that pushes a lot of people away is just kind of how they're raised. And that's also why people have those intention or those ideas that when they come to places like this, that it is all about sex. Because a lot of people when they're, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but I'll get back to what we were talking
Absolutely.
about. So a lot of people, your first naked experience, especially when you get into adolescence, is either it's sex or it's like watching porn or something like that. So like it's just automatically sex, you know what I mean? So when you start growing up, that's still in the back of your mind, and it's still very taboo to be naked in front of other people without having any sexual interactions with that. So I think why people go towards nudism is definitely it's new, or like it's new to them, and it's kind of a little bit of taboo. And I feel like as much of it as people want to be in a box and do like their 9-to-5 job, I think there's still a little bit of every single one of us that wants to experience something new and something exciting. And this is very, very exciting and very new to a lot of people. And when you actually get here, and I guess I can't really answer why people get there, but I do know why people come back, is because it's such an exhilarating feeling to be able to just stand butt naked in front of somebody and have them not judge you at all, not make fun of you for either your weight or any marks on your bodies or what kind of clothes you're wearing, anything like that. It's just like, this is all you are right there. And to be accepted for all you are physically it's an amazing experience. And then to know that there's places that you can go out there and have that experience every single time you go there, it's like, why would you not want to experience that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think one of my first experiences around anything that involved nudism was going to hot springs that were clothing optional. And I remember just like floating in the water naked, and it wasn't a bathtub, or a hot tub. It was like this big natural water, like feeling so connected to nature. Is that a feeling that you get too when you go out there?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is something, and it stems from, when you're, especially even when you're a child, if you're raised in a non-nudist environment, the only times you're naked is when you're just in the shower, and then you're clothed for the entire day. You know what I mean? So when you do finally get out there and, if you've been hiking before in clothes and you finally do it naked, there is something so exhilarating about it. It's not a sexual thing. It's not anything like that. It's just like, yeah, I guess like in a way, not sexual, but like it's like that type of like that type of happiness, I guess. You know what I mean? Like you're not like turned on, but you're just like, it's so beautiful. And to feel, it's very cliche again, but feel that wind on your bare skin and to feel that sun just hit every single crevice of your body. It's absolutely amazing. It's a beautiful experience, and I'm quite sure it's like 100% really healthy for you.
Yeah, I feel like there's something kind of like a childlike pleasure in being able to be outside and like feel the sun on your whole body and feel the wind on your
Mhm.
body. It's very meditative also, I find.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah.
You actually live at a nudist resort, right? Like,
Yes.
what kind of activities do you do there? How is your life this like similar and different from, the clothed world?
Yeah. So we've been living at Olivedale Ranch, which is located in like Redlands, Riverside area in Southern California. Um, it's definitely a lot different. It's definitely more different than it is same living in the clothed world or the real world, as some people would call it. Um, Definitely, just imagine like all your neighbors are just always happy. They're always like willing to give, I would say, the shirt off their back, but they're not wearing shirts. But like giving whatever you need, you have somebody here for you. So it is a community. There's like 100 and some people I think that live here. But it's so nice to just be able to like walk outside and just be naked, and like it's not like I'm not like that weird neighbor that like if you sneak through, like if you look through his fence, you're gonna see that he's naked. Like this is just where I live. It's just what I do. One difference, or I mean, there's many differences, but one thing that I really enjoy, especially as a man, and again, I'm not speaking for all men. This is just me as myself. I do get a way better appreciation for obviously human beings, but women in general, because I do see naked women every single day, and it's not necessarily that it's numb me not to get turned on by a nude woman, but it makes me understand that like you can, like women don't have to just be like this like sex object that you're always just trying to go out and get. You know what I mean? And I say that because a lot of people that message us, that's their first thing in their mind. We get messages where people are asking for pictures of Elizabeth, my partner. Can we get pictures of her? Can I do this? What happens if I get a boner there? Can I jerk off there? Whatever. Um, but I'm like, that must be frustrating to constantly have that in the back of your mind. And don't get me wrong, sex is awesome. Like I'm not pushing them away, saying that, oh, like you're a bad person for wanting sex. But it's very powerful. It's very empowering to be able to see a naked woman, to hang out with naked women and not have that man urge to like just want to have sex. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think about the fact that because I've talked also to some folks about like the magic of like cuddling with people, having platonic touch, and that
Mm.
doesn't have to become sex. I think a lot of times we're taught that our sex drive is like this wild animal inside us that's just we have no control and it's just going to eat and take what it wants, and that's a lot of what our stories tell us. So
Mhm.
I think there is some magic behind being able to be around naked people and feel like maybe feeling the arousal but not having to act on it, or like relaxing yourself to be like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do right now,
Yeah.
because it's like you said, if you get naked it's because you're in the shower or it's time for sex.
Mhm.
So training yourself into this new way of thinking.
Yeah.
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 What is Our Naked Story all about? What's the goal of your podcast?
Yeah. So kind of just a little bit of history, so it kind of makes sense at the end. So when we first got together, it was really cool. We actually met at this nudist resort here. But it's weird how it works out because we had the same exact friends. We've been going to the same exact parties for years, and we never ever met each other. Somehow we didn't know each other existed. And then, long story short, we did finally meet one night and fell in love. Well, at least I fell in love. I don't know what. No, I'm just kidding. I think she fell in love with me, but I fell in love for sure. Um, and then we started doing stuff where like we had a Tumblr account because we were just always naked everywhere we went. So like, oh, like we'll post like a butt picture like in the mountains or something like that, or with the hands up in the air, kind of just typical, I guess, relationship stuff. Um, and then I don't know, it was just like, so one day it hit me. I'm like, because like we were talking to somebody, I forgot exactly what we were talking about. I'm like, dude, we meet so many interesting people, and they're all like, they all have at least one thing in common where they're all nudists, or they consider themselves nudists or naturists. I was like, how cool would that be if we can like start a podcast where we just talk to all these people that we meet from around the world, and we hear their stories, how they got started with nudism, you know. And then obviously like the word or the title Our Naked Story got started because it was mine and Elizabeth's story. It was our naked story. These are the people we meet, stuff like that. So after a couple episodes, you know, we started kind of getting a little bit more, not necessarily a following, but more people interested in it and asking questions. And then we started noticing that Our Naked Story was not necessarily geared to just nudists, but we had more nudists listening in because they're already familiarized with the topic. So then it kind of hit us this last year or like the beginning of, or the middle of last year, where I don't know, I just had like we had this situation happen where somebody was talking to us about like inclusivity. God, I can never say this word. Does that, you know what I'm trying to say though?
Inclusivity?
There you go. There's the word. I can never ever say it. Sober, I don't know. And I was like, oh, like it made sense. So somebody was pretty much trying to tell us that like we were not being inclusive. You know, we were trying to make it like this younger podcast and like all of our parties were geared to younger people, which isn't true. But anyways, but then it hit me where I'm like, oh, like on the bigger picture, like this is all of our story. Like this isn't just mine and Elizabeth's story anymore. There's people who are genuinely like interested in, obviously in our story ourselves, but they have their own stories too. All the people we talk to, it's their stories. But then just like as humanity, we all like, this is our entire story. Everything that's happening every single day. Like it's all happening right now. And obviously the naked part, you know, it's just fun to be naked. So kind of what we do is we just promote nudism. We do gear a little bit towards the younger generation as far as people who are interested in nudism and wants to try out. So what we do is we kind of just talk to guests from all around the world. We ask them where they got started or how they got started with nudism. And it's very interesting to see that all these people from around the world, they all start pretty much the same exact way that anybody has it in their minds, where they're very nervous at first. They didn't know if they want to do it. You know, it took them 6 months to finally like get the courage to go. And then eventually it did. And then now they're like, they do it every weekend, or they do it when they're naked, when they're at home or whatever. So it's very cool for people who, if you ever even have the slightest thought, but you're so nervous, don't think that you're like a weirdo because you're nervous. Everybody's nervous. We were all nervous before. You know what I mean? I think the only people who are not nervous are people who are raised in that type of environment. You know what I mean? And then, so we had like the website and stuff like that, which we actually ended up getting rid of. But our website did have kind of some blog entries that we had about like how we met, some stories from some of the parties that we throw, some of the events that we throw. So yeah, that's kind of Our Naked Story in a nutshell, I guess.
Nice. In your episodes, do you see like some themes? Like what are some things that maybe are like surprising in people's stories, especially like different ages and locations?
It's definitely, so for ages, it's cool to see how much more it seemed to be accepted back in the day, which I didn't think it would have been that case where, and again, not speaking for everybody, but from what I've seen so far, it seems like the older generation was very a covered up society. But then, and we also hang out with a lot of hippies, so maybe that's why. But it seems like there was a whole bunch of nudist resorts back in the day, and it wasn't that big of a deal. You know, it wasn't until I think around like the 70s or 80s, I think is when, or like the end of 70s, early 80s is when like it seemed that nudism started to kind of die out a little bit. You know what I mean? And then it's very weird to see that the younger generation, which I feel is like some of the most accepting people, you know, we're very open with what we talk about and stuff like that. It seems that the actual nudist part is actually dying out in the younger generation. And it's kind of sad to see that, which we can talk about that later. But so that's one of the interesting things I see between ages, at least. And also another thing that I like to see is also people's background. So one, how people were raised, and then also what people do for a living. So obviously we respect people's privacy, so we don't really like right off the bat ask people what they do for a living. But if they talk about it, you realize they're normal people. You know, you can be a firefighter, or a teacher, or a cop, or a librarian, or whatever. You can work at Amazon. Like there are people from all different walks of life, and they all have this one thing in common. You know, and I think that's one. We won't get too much into it, but I think that's one major step that we can all take into just bettering this world right now, is find the one thing that you do have in common. You know, there's a lot of disagreements out there, and again, we'll just keep it to the nudist part of it, but at least for a nudist environment, we at least have one thing in common, where we like to be naked, and then you can work around problems after that. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think nudism is dying out among younger people?
So being naked, I don't think is dying out. It's the actual nudism part of it. So the actual philosophy behind it. So there's, oh, shoot. Stefan, I forgot his last name though. There's this guy, he runs, it's called the Bear Oaks podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And he's absolutely amazing. His name's Stefan. He runs a nudist resort out in Canada. And he is like a very strict believer in his philosophy by nudism, which is pretty much that you're here to, or naturism, sorry, he calls it naturism, is you're pretty much like, you're here to take care of your own body. You should be, you know, eating healthy. You should be, you know, working out. You should be just like respecting other people. It doesn't matter how they look or anything like that. So I think that part is sticking with the younger people. It's the actual word itself, I think, is what's scaring younger people away. So, and like we were talking about before, where a lot of people's ideas of a nudist resort or a nudist beach is just like old, rich white guys. Like that's like turning them away. But, or just even just old people too. I use old, rich white guys because that's what somebody told me before, where they're like, yeah, it's just a bunch of old, rich. Anyways. So having an older generation at nudist resorts, which is true, we are definitely the youngest people that live here for sure, and it's definitely an older crowd, but that shouldn't scare people away. I think you can learn a lot from older people, and if you really sit down and if you're not so scared of them, they're actually really amazing people and they have really cool stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely seen the that stereotype. I've seen it at resorts. I've heard people repeat it, and it's that thing of like, there won't be young people or more diversity out there unless people know about it and then actually go out and check it out. And I have to say, because I've been out and had these experiences, it's so worth it. And it's, once you're over that initial anxiety, it's a really beautiful feeling. Yeah. So I also know that you run a meetup group. And right now, with the time that we're in, we're not meeting up with each other because it's COVID times. What kind of things are you doing with your meetup group?
So the meetup group, they do. We kind of stepped away a little bit from it, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm in charge of the whole thing. But from what I've seen so far, they do a lot of Zoom meetings, which is pretty cool. So you still get that social interaction, and obviously everybody's naked on the Zoom meeting. So they'll do like pizza nights where like each household buys their own pizza, and then they hang out. Or I want to say they did like a movie night too. Somehow they did like a Zoom movie, or they might have all just been watching the same movie but had Zoom on at the same time, which is pretty cool. So you at least get that social connection where you're able to talk to other people. As far as like actual events like that, like you said, it is COVID right now, and you know, obviously we do still have some events. I'm not going to, you know, lie about it, but it's very, you know, people do keep their distances, and if people are worried, you know, and they want to wear a mask, they wear a mask, or they don't come, which is, I think everybody has the right to every single, like whatever they think is going on. That's what you think, that like you can't change that. So, but the events are definitely very smaller. It's definitely not how it used to be right now with COVID. We used to have, you know, parties where 150, 200 people will come. Now you're looking at like 15, 20 people, you know, at a party. So
yeah, wow. This last summer, I actually had a meetup. It was the only in-person meetup that my group had through Sex Positive. And we went to the beach. We went to the nude beach because, or I should say clothing optional, because you can wear clothes there.
Yeah.
But we could be socially distant. We were outdoors, and we made the rule to put a mask on if you approach somebody else. And it was so nice because we could dance together, we meditated together, we swam together, and it was very safe, and everyone stayed healthy. Yeah. Like, I think nudism actually can invite people a little closer in a way. Well, we can't actually physically be closer.
Yeah. But closer together as just talking and, you know, yeah. No, absolutely. Nudism, it's such a magnificent thing. And like, I don't know, it's so hard. It's hard for me to wrap my head around somebody not wanting to try it because they're afraid of what people might think about them, which that just stems from a huger issue where I'm like, why? Like, I mean, we won't, obviously we're not going to fix it. People are just assholes. Sorry, a-hole sometimes. And I don't know. I think that's just thing. But when you go to a nudist resort, you talk to any nudist and they all have the same exact experience, where it's, yeah, people are very, accepting, very, very judgment-free zone. So I don't see why somebody would still be afraid of it if hundreds of people are telling them, that it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be amazing once you do it. I get that it's nervous part, but like, it's frustrating me just because I'm so happy when I'm in these communities, and I want everybody else to be that happy too. And it's like being like, hey, I have $100 for you right now to buy, those shoes that you want, but somebody's like, oh, I don't know, I don't know if I actually want it. Like, dude, just take it. Like, you have a place.
I was about to ask you why you moved to a nudist community, but I think you just answered that question. So let me think this over. What made you make that decision in the first place to actually say, you know what, this is where I want to live?
Yeah. So I was going through a weird situation. So I got divorced, and there's this whole thing. So I was by myself, and I was living in a 3-bedroom house with one of my buddies. It was cool, it was kind of like a college house, whatever. And then I kept coming to Olivedale, and I just remember every single time I would leave, like I would just be like, when I had to put my clothes back on, that was like the worst part about the weekend, just because I was so bummed that I had to wear clothes and I was gonna be away from my friends, and I wasn't gonna be able to walk around naked. And I mean, nudism is just a huge part of my life. So I was like, I have to keep this feeling going. I can't do this anymore. So I talked to the owner, and pretty much I wanted that feeling 24/7, which I understand it's not real, but I definitely get it more than I did when I moved, or when I was living in a regular house. So yeah, so I guess just wanting that feeling constantly made me want to pursue living here. And then when I finally moved in, it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
How do you think that making that decision to live in this place where you're happier and you're feeling good, how do you think that's affected other parts of your life?
I think how to explain it. So we live at a resort. This is where people come when they've had a bad week and they want to just like have a good weekend. This is what I get to go home to every single day. So even when I'm at work and I'm like, oh, like this is shitty, this is a bad day. I just want to go home. I just want to do this. I get to go home to a resort, to a news resort. I get it. My house is the place that people go to vacation to. You know what I mean? And what that does, though, it allows me, because I already have that happiness in me, it allows me to bring that happiness to other people to hopefully just make it be a chain reaction. So even if I'm at work and it's a bad day, I'm still happy that I live here. So I can be happy with another coworker, and then they're gonna go be happy with somebody else. So I guess that's kind of like I wish that it would just kind of just like flow through that way. You know what I mean?
What do you say to people who are uncomfortable with the idea of like being in a group of naked people because they might be taken advantage of?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm just speaking again for myself. This is communities like this, especially Anner communities. In a way, you're kind of like, when you pay your gate fee and you come in a way, you're paying for security for kind of worries like that. Because this is a community, people are always looking out for each other. If anything weird happens or anything that you feel uncomfortable with, definitely just bring it up. You can yell it, you can talk to a manager, you can talk to anybody else who's around there, and that person they'll get escorted out. When you have kind of this family atmosphere, especially like where we're at, this is a family nudist resort. So for people who are worried about stuff that could happen, like at a nightclub or anything like that, and again, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say like, oh, like it has never happened before ever in the history of Everness. I don't know what the statistics are, but I do know that when you do come to a nudist resort, especially an Anner one, it's very secure here, very safe. Everybody's always looking out for each other. And again, if something happens or you see like see something, say something, that's definitely applied here beyond explanation. It's it's just a very, very good community. You always have somebody looking out for you.
Yeah. You just mentioned it's also a family resort. I've actually been to Olive Dell, and I remember feeling uneasy, uncomfortable seeing that there were kids around. What do you think
Yeah.
about the nudist parenting?
Yeah. So that's a kind of a weird thing. And again, it kind of talks about like what we talked about before, where a lot of people in their heads, it is sex and shower and like porn. That's when you see
Hmm.
naked. That's it. And obviously, like if you're already putting that naked with that, and then you bring a child involved, it freaks a lot of people out. But again, you have to remember, not you, but people have to remember this is a nudist environment. This isn't like a swingers resort. People aren't they're not having sex out in public here. You know what I mean? And honestly, I have a child of my own, and a nudist environment, I I personally believe that is a beautiful way to raise a child. You raise a child to learn one, how normal bodies look like, so that if you're for some children who the only naked women that they see before they actually see like their first woman, is porn. That's what they think everything's going to be. And then when you see your first naked woman and they have like stretch marks or they have this or whatever, then they might get all freaked out. But here you're raised to know that there's millions and millions of different body types, and I think I personally don't have a problem with it. One, I know what my intentions are here. I know that there's security around here. I know people are always looking out for the children, but I try to understand people's worries about it. When you do have nudity involved, and then children, it's a weird situation for people who are not used to this. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with thinking that it's weird. I'm not bashing people on that. That's just. But if you, like you said, you've been here, and like even you're like I was there, and it was still like kind of seemed weird for me. But me personally, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's beautiful for children to be raised in an environment like this.
Yeah, that's part of what I was processing for when I saw it, because I had to kind of question why am I uncomfortable? Like I'm
Mhm.
a guest here essentially. They live there.
Yeah,
And what I came back to was, it was my own feelings about my body and how I was raised, and that feeling of, not showing your body because that's not okay. And I didn't have a good gauge, like you said, of what people look like when their clothes are off, and
yeah,
feeling shame about my own body because I don't look like what, you know, um, wasn't watching a lot of porn when I was a teenager, but there's
yeah, yeah,
definitely lots of photoshopped images about what, your stomach and your curves are supposed to look like. So
yeah.
that would be, I'd be really interested to hear like the difference in how you view the world if you had more exposure to that
Exactly.
younger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
that's
sure.
really
And then I mean,
fascinating.
I'm sure they grow up respecting, not just women but just people in general a little
Hmm.
bit more. You I don't know, it's hard. It's weird that it's weird that it's weird. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, it's just like a bunch of hippies living there, and it's like, yeah, but hippies they're pretty cool. They're really nice people. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you have that reality also that people tend to feel the need to comment on each other's bodies, and it's sexualizing all of the time. So the idea that you could just be yourself and not have to be concerned about those little comments that you're just you, like,
yeah,
um I think in nudist culture there's a lot less like a need to comment on how other people look, like we have
yeah.
a lot just in society at large. Do you think that's
Hmm.
true?
Oh, 100%. Well, and I think one of the reasons for that is that when you're naked and somebody else is naked and you go to like, I think a lot of people get blocked. So it's kind of like an ego check being naked, because like it's very easy to sit behind a screen and then call somebody fat, like through the phone on a picture of them. When you're in clothes, you're behind your screen, nobody knows who you are. It's very easy. Go try doing that when you're butt naked in front of a bunch of people who are respecting other people. You're not going to do that. You know what I mean? I don't know if maybe it changes some people's like thought process. I don't know if people are thinking it though, but they're not saying it. But still, you don't. People also need to realize they don't have to say anything at all either. I mean? There's a lot of people who are like they're very entitled to, or they think that they're entitled to their opinions and stuff. And it's like, you don't have to say anything. You can just shut your mouth. You know what I mean? Like And this would be a good kind of story just to show it's not all daisies and butterflies, all the time. There was a situation where somebody was drinking, and me and Elizabeth walked into the bar, and we just got back from playing pickleball, and I was like, oh yeah, like I was telling the bartender, I was like, yeah, she's getting really good at pickleball. And this drunk guy was like, oh, I bet she's good in bed too. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, you didn't have to say anything at all. We weren't talking to you. We didn't, I mean, so it's very rare for stuff like that to happen, but it does happen. People are just people in general, you know what I mean? But you get a lot less of those people. And obviously, we said something and it got brought up to them, and I won't say exactly what happened in that situation, but it got resolved for sure, but that's a perfect example of, if somebody says something rude or anything like that, you have the right as a person to, one, tell them that's not okay, and then, get them kicked out. Very simple.
I think that's also key to creating consent culture. And obviously, the name of the show is Given Consent, because I want to explore these topics of living a more consensual life, because we don't have that in society. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. That's important, because when you go out to the bar and somebody's inappropriate with you, they don't ever get told that they were inappropriate, or it's just the person they're pursuing who's yelling at them. So the idea that there's this responsibility within the community, and people are taking care of each other and watching out to make sure that they're taken care of, I think is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah 100%.
Well, thanks so much for telling me about this community and how it all works. It's really great.
It's very interesting, and I get it. It's not normal to most people, but it's normal to me, and I love it.
Yeah absolutely.
It's weird, because like I'm so used to all this now, and I forget what my worries were at the beginning, what other people's worries are, because when you're here and you see for yourself that, like, it's a great environment to be in, it's hard for people to try to accept that, like, nothing bad is probably going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's also a process also, because it's easy to sit back and say, well, I grew up wearing my clothes, and I was told that it's in the locker room, it's in the bathroom, you don't walk around naked. And that's just set. And the thing is, that sits in your brain as like a limiting belief about how things are supposed to be. It's not necessarily good or bad, but it's about taking a step out of what's normal and seeing if it feels right to you. And then you discover you have this whole other person inside of you.
Yeah. No, exactly.
And it's like, sorry to be like, it's real, it really happens, but you don't really know until you show up and try it.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, people also remember too, like, normal's not always right either. So, like, just from what other people, there's some people that they're into things that I'm not into, but that to them, that's their normal life. There's people like dirt bike riding and shit, like stuff like that. I'm not really interested in it, but to them, that's like, I don't know. Yeah, no, exactly what you said. It's just, I wish that more people would try it though. I really would love to see. I make a joke about it a lot, but I think nudism really can change the world. I'm not just saying we should all just get naked all the time, but the mindset behind nudism is very, very magical.
Why do you think nudism and specifically can change the world?
So I think it's just having that ego check where, like, you realize that you're not better than anybody else. Like, whatever you think, if you're like this wanting this higher power to tell people what to do, I don't know. It's just when you actually get to reflect on yourself, you start to, like, you find flaws, and like flaws are good to check yourself with. You're like, I'm not perfect.
Before I ask my last question, where can people find you if they want more of this, more information?
Yeah, so we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, we're at our.nakedstory. And then you can also find all of our podcasts on every single podcast platform, or major podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, stuff like that. And then unfortunately our website is not up anymore. But yeah, and then also, if you guys have any questions, feel free you can email us. We're at ournakedstory@gmail.com. And we love replying to people and helping people out if they're really interested in nudism.
Right. Thank you. So my last question for you, usually I like to ask a question kind of about the, like, what I would usually ask you is how to stay body positive while we're here in quarantine. But I also want to ask if someone wants to get started, if someone actually wants to check this out, like how do they go about it? Because what's interesting about naturism is you can still do it in the pandemic.
No, exactly. Yeah. And there's still some debates about it, but I'm pretty sure that because of the pandemic, that we've actually seen a pretty big spike in interest for nudism,
Oh, yeah.
simply because it is very simple to be naked. It's literally like one of the easiest things you can do in your entire life. You just don't get dressed. So I would definitely recommend, especially right now with everything going on, I would just recommend going, like if you're going to take a shower in the mornings, especially if you're either okay with being naked in front of the people you live with, or if you live at home, alone, just shower and then just don't get dressed. Do your morning rituals, in the mornings, or naked, so you can make your coffee. Don't cook bacon for sure. Made that mistake before. So bacon for sure, you need to wear pants. But just go along with your day, and especially if you're working from home and you don't have to do any Zoom meetings or anything like that, then just work naked. And I don't know if you have like a little secluded backyard, you can kind of just maybe just take one step out, for the first day, and then the next day you'll, go out a little bit farther. But there's definitely a lot of stuff you can do in order to get involved, and then also get involved with these meetup groups. You can still have these conversations with other people. There's if you go, Facebook's a little bit hard because you can't really put the word nudist or nude, I think, in any group, or something's weird about that. But they're out there, and do your research. And there's plenty of people you can talk to. I am gonna, if you don't mind, I wanted to shout out at least one person, because
Yeah.
they're very, very informative. They have a whole bunch of blogs. It's the Naked Wanderings. They're huge advocates for nudism, and they have so many blog articles on, if you have any question about nudism, they have an answer for it. And then even if they don't have a blog article about it, you can email them as well. You can find that on their website. But I highly recommend people checking out their page as well.
Well, I thought of one more question I wanted to ask you. What has been kind of like personally transformative for you in being part of this community?
So it's definitely so just respecting other people. Not necessarily. I mean, obviously, the respecting people's bodies just kind of comes with the territory, but it's respecting people just as people. So their feelings, their thoughts, their ideas, like whatever's going on with them, they're people. And this is a beautiful place to see that people are people, same people a lot, because you get to see that, get to see everything right when you meet them. So there's no hiding behind anything. Like, this is who they are, and this is one of the, not just Olive Dell, but just nudist places in general, where I've had so many open conversations with people. Like, there's some things that people don't even tell their parents, but when you strip away all those clothes, it's very easy to talk to somebody else and really talk to them from the soul, and that's to help me out. So even though I'm not naked in front of people when I'm at work or anything like that, I'm still have that mindset where I'm like, this is like, I want to know, like your heart, so that's the thing that's really been very transformative for me.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for letting us know all about these communities and what's going on there. And check out our Naked Story if you want to hear more about this.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you want to see more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that we end up in your feed. If you got something out of this personally that was helpful to you, also please leave a comment below. I love hearing the feedback about what's working and what's not. That's what makes this show better. And until next time, love you more, and we'll see you then.